What happened to that story the other day from, where was it? I don't remember the state. But this left-wing kid was about to go after Justice Kavanaugh. And he was mad about abortion and mass shooting, so he decided he was going to mass shoot and kill Justice Kavanaugh, his family. The kid he had stuff. He had duct tape, he had rope, he had knives. Like, he was about to go in on a Supreme Court justice's whole family. What happened to that story? It only lasted like 2 days? 1 day, 2 days? Illegally, the Roe v. Wade decision was leaked. We still haven't heard how that happened. They should know by now. That's not something hard to find out. Only 8 people plus their staff knew. They're the only ones who knew. Who leaked that information? Was it a justice? Was it a clerk? How come we don't know what happened by now? That leak, I think it was last month, early last month, almost got a Supreme Court justice killed. Well, it wasn't just the leak, it was a combination of things. On top of leaking they verified, I was gonna say potential. On top of leaking a decision draft, they leaked Justice Kavanaugh's home address and doxed his address and put it out there. And Jen Psaki, the former White House press secretary, went up there and encouraged people to protest outside this man's house. That's illegal. That is illegal. You can't do that to a judge. If that's not intimidation, I don't know what is. But anyway, that story disappeared because it didn't fit a narrative. It was a white kid, so that was good. But then when they found out his reasoning, they're like, oh man, he's one of us. Let him go. But why didn't they get to the bottom of that leak? Because Supreme Court justices are a lifetime appointment. We can't have protests outside their houses every time there's a controversial decision. Like, that just can't have that. So what happened to that story? There's another one. Now this one everybody has to remember. There was a mass shooting, a supposed white supremacist dude. Let me turn in here. This dude shot at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people at a country music concert. He went to Vegas. Supposedly he was a crazy white right-wing guy, and he just let off hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rounds into all white people at a country music concert. That's a weird one. I gotta admit, it sounds kind of fishy. But what happened to that story? I remember something about a security guard fleeing to Mexico and was gonna do an interview, and maybe he did, maybe didn't, but we never got to the bottom of what happened with that guy. I know he's dead, but usually they can figure out a lot about his life and how that situation came to be by just investigating. Remember when people used to investigate? And it had nothing to do with Russian collusion. They just used to do real investigations. Or these people, they're called, what's they're called? They're called journalists. Remember those? They used to have those. They would do independent investigations and get to the bottom of stuff, and they would be very skeptical of the leaders and government in charge at the moment. not just the ones they like and don't like. Remember them? They were media members. Yeah. Journalists. And they would just walk up to people and say, hey, stick a microphone in their face and just start asking them real questions. And they would do like an expose and figure out, oh man, we're going to get to the bottom of this corruption. What happened to that? The liberal kid who ended up calling the police on himself because he realized he'd been played by the media, and he realized, okay, there's a lot of guns out there in front of this guy's house. I got played, and he realized that he was in the wrong, and he's like, I got to get looked at. So he called 911 on himself, which is good. Shouldn't have got to that, but he was swung to doing something so drastic, not only ending other people's lives, but ending his own, and ending, his family would never be the same after he did something like that. Isn't that weird how the story just went away 1-2 days? Imagine if the attempt had been on a right-wing justice, or on a left-wing justice. Imagine what would happen then. Why is this kid standing behind my car? This is why I like driving when I talk. He kept going. Imagine if it was a left-wing judge that was gone after by a supposed right-wing extremist, white supremacists. Then it would have been there was some kind of plot or coup to replace another justice and have a full, well, they already have full control of not control, but stacked, I guess you would say. But they're legit appointments, but you know how they are. But yeah, the Vegas one too, that was always weird how that one lasted about 3 days. We heard some stuff, we know he died, but they never got to the bottom of it. Oh man, he had all these guns, assault rifles and this and that. He was shooting out the window, and they had elevator footage of him going up the elevator with the bags. They said it took him a couple days to get all the stuff in, but that was it. They never talked about motive. Somebody had to know something about this guy's former life. Because I know a white supremacist isn't going to go and shoot up all white people at a country music concert. That just does not make sense. So the story had to go, I guess. Very strange. Very strange. There's another one, but it wasn't really, it had nothing. And I just finished my shopping. My phone overheated again. So what I was saying, there's another story, and this one's funny, but I haven't seen much coverage anywhere over it. The Cook County DA, I believe she's Cook County DA. She may be Illinois, I don't know, but her name is Kim Fox. I just imagine myself being a police officer and getting a domestic disturbance call and going to the home and saying, oh, this residence is familiar, I've done detail here before. And then the door opens and it is the district attorney who just beat up her husband. Yeah, she I don't know if she was arrested. What do you do? Because she's the prosecutor, right? She decides all the cases that those police officers submit, or everyone they arrest goes through her in her office. So what do you do in that situation? Do you arrest her? I mean, I guess you have to arrest her. Nobody's above the law, but you gonna be the guy to arrest the DA? I don't know. It's a very weird one. I only saw it once, and I follow the news pretty closely. I only saw it once, and maybe it's a bigger deal in Chicago, because that's where she is, or in Illinois, that's where she is. But maybe that's why she doesn't prosecute all these violent crimes, because she's internally knowing that she's a man beater. That explains, like, the violence is now spilling over into the DA's home. We really got to figure out what's going on in Chicago, Cook County in general, but mainly Chicago. Yeah, she's beating up her husband. I guess she gave him a black eye, or at least she hit him in the eye. The details came out. Story just not an issue. Can't talk about it, or I don't understand. Like, I do understand. I just don't know what I would do in that situation where I came to work and then someone who's essentially my boss is there breaking the law. Yeah, you still have a job, and if it doesn't go over well, you're now an open target, almost like a whistleblower type status. Very interesting, though. But I mean, it makes sense. It's Chicago. Makes perfect sense. You're gonna have violence, may as well start at the top. Oh God. What other one? There's one more. This is a weird one. There's a bunch of dudes that they say are white supremacists. And how do we know? Because the Southern, SPLC says so. And they determine, I guess now, who is a racist and who is not a racist. Southern Poverty Law Center or something like that. So they said these guys are racist, so I guess that means they're racist. They also declared Proud Boys racist, which I've already talked about how ridiculous that is. But a bunch of guys got into a U-Haul with shields, shin guards, and riot gear, and were headed down to a gay pride parade. And apparently that constitutes, I don't know what that constitutes, a prevented attack? They didn't mention guns, they mentioned 2 guns. So it wasn't preventing like a mass shooting or anything. It sounds like, and based on the articles that I read, these guys were going to riot. Okay. They weren't going to protest, they were going to riot. Hence the riot gear and like 20 or 30 guys stuffed into a U-Haul truck. But this brings me back to 2020, and I thought rioting was okay as long as you feel it's justified and you have a gripe with society. You see how that the old saying of, hey, this is just a slippery slope, you probably want to stay away from that. You see how that comes into play now, when whether these guys are white supremacists or not, I don't know, but if they were, why can't they riot? We were told that rioting is okay to a degree. They never really laid out the standard. They called them peaceful protests. But hey, if there's some violence that happens, they're angry. That's what we were told in 2020 over the BLM riots all across the country. I understand the moral difference when you're talking about the issues that these people have with society. But if you say it's good for one, you can't then say it's not good for another. This is the problem I have when people justify violence. It should be condemned regardless and prosecuted regardless. It shouldn't be okay for some people and not okay for others, because now you're being 100% subjective. Which is why the law is the law. That's what it is. We're going to prosecute to the fullest extent because you broke the law. We wrote some stuff. Now you have to follow it. If we don't write the stuff, you don't have to do it. But as soon as the government writes some stuff, they all of a sudden become the arbiters of what they're going to prosecute. And that's why I have a problem with stuff that's going on the border, where they decide, yeah, we're not gonna enforce these laws. Because we would all have a problem if I lined up with everybody watching this on a street and we were all going 85 in a 40. We would all have a problem with the cop just pulling one person over. We would prefer they either let us go or they get out in front and slow us down, because that's fair. Right? But if he just picks you out, you're going to say, well, wait a minute. Why do the rules apply to them but not me? Is it the law or is it not? You're subjectively enforcing it. And that's not right. Well, if you're a black Israelite, if you're a black nationalist, what is the difference between your stances on segregation and a white person's stances on segregation if you both agree that there needs to be segregation? I'm not calling out black Israelites, because I don't know as much about them. I just know there's been issues with them being supposedly so-called black nationalists and committing crimes. I don't know if that's true. I just said them as an example because I believe that they've been lumped in with other groups. But what's the difference between a racist black person who wants us to be segregated and a racist white person who wants us to be segregated? They both want the same end goal. What's the difference? So when you selectively enforce laws, you pull a bunch of guys over and say, hey, we're heroes, we prevented a riot. I thought riots were okay. Washington State, Oregon, they had riots go on probably longer than everyone else, like a year. Minnesota. So when I hear stories like these guys getting arrested for potentially or planning to riot, and then the police said that they had people within that organization, I'm like, all right, because we already know what happens when the feds get involved. They plan the crimes. They line everybody up to go commit the crimes. They collect the people and convince the people to go do crimes that they wouldn't normally do, and then they arrest them for doing it or for planning it. So I'm not saying that's what happened here, but there was an officer on the scene who said they had people within that group. He literally said, we have people. If there's a group like this, we have people in the group, and they'll call us when it's about to go down. But that's another story that just, it started out because they used those trigger words, the white supremacy. So it started out, oh, this is a good one. We got them. Hey, what did they do? Nothing. But we prevented it. Prevented what? A mass shooting? No, not quite. Well, what did you prevent? Well, they had shin guards. And they had shields. So I think we prevented a riot. That's a non-story. By their own standards, that's a non-story. I don't know. But Chicagoans, you guys should be demanding a recall of Kim Foxx, because she's the head of people prosecuting crimes in Chicago, and then now we know that she's smacking her husband up anytime he gets out of line. She's a criminal. She allows criminals to commit crimes and doesn't prosecute them. And she commits crimes, and we'll see if she gets prosecuted. But is that really who you need enforcing laws in your state or in your city or in your county? No, definitely. Everyone doesn't have to be perfect, but when your vocation goes in direct conflict to what you do, you got to find another line of work. Hopefully it's not Governor of Illinois, because there's a wave of leftist DAs in this country who do not prosecute crimes, particularly gun crimes, yet they want to take guns. So they don't want to enforce the laws that are there to prevent gun crimes. They just want the guns, and I think that's what it ultimately always leads back to. Getting the guns away from the good guys. Because nobody who has a gun is a good guy, according to them. But then, if a bad guy goes and shoots 12 people, they drop the gun charges and let them out, $5,000 bail. Is what it is. Fire Kim Fox. She's a criminal.